It's no secret Chinese stock have not been doing great for the past couple of years. The CQQ Chinese Technologies ETF has declined 60% since being the February 2021. One of the biggest reasons for the underperformance fear around the Chinese company being delisted from the U.S. exchange. China and the U.S. have had long-standing dispute related accounting oversight of U.S. list. So Chinese stock has been escalate sustainable over the past 2 years. 2021, the Chinese ride-hailing company Didi listed on the New York Stock Exchange, but quickly come under the pressures from the regulators. Both countries was forced to the delist. Now trades on the over-the-counter market. The share price was fallen more than 80%. It's not just so. A few weeks ago, looked like every single one of the 200 Chinese company list U.S. were the track to delist. Given the uncertainty, is no wonder the U.S. investor has been hesitate to buy the Chinese stock. The price and the declined commensurately, and the disagreement between the U.S. and Chinese regulators all come down to accounting, which is not the most exciting topic for incredible important. The public company or the publicly traded company have their financial statement audited, and firms such as KPMG, PwC. Chinese company has no exceptions. The big four accounting firm have office in China. The auditor are not perfect 2,000 years ago. The poet ask who please is the policeman investor. Policeman investor has asked equivalent questions. Who auditors issue come to the breaking point with collapse of the American energy company Enron. It's turned out that their auditor, Arthur Anderson, Robert Stam, Enron fraudulent financials until the firm bankruptcy. The bankruptcy in 2001. If the investing public can trust the auditors, then what's the point? Have blamed them at a response to the Enron disaster in the U.S. So, Sarbanes-Oxley in 2002, which is restoring the confidence in public company financials as part of law and U.S. creative public company accounting oversight board of PCAOB. This body acts as auditors. PCAOB, the body acts as auditor. The auditor and make sure the accounting firm doing their job. All company listed on the exchange are required. PCAOB audit regardless of where the company is headquartered. And the most part of company all over the world have complied, but there is one major exception to the China. The Chinese government didn't take kindly to the foreign regulator digging around in their company account. Many Chinese state-owned enterprise listed on the U.S. exchange, so they're afraid they are the PCAOB could identify sensitive information. With the national security implications, Chinese regulators have prohibited domestic companies from complying. These auditors past 20 years, the U.S. regulators largely turned a blind eye. The regulator largely turned blind eyes to the non-compliant through the 2010. So the U.S. investor was hungry to buy the pieces of rapidly growing Chinese economic and Chinese company were listing on the New York Stock Exchange left and right. All changes IPO looking coffee China. Answer is Starbucks in the early 2020 short seller exposed that the large portion of their sales were fabricate the share price 97, and it's interesting, the stock made a massive comeback since then. It's now down to the 15% is IPO, regardless high-profile fraud. Cases sounds alarm for the U.S. authority. Soon, the President Donald Trump signed into the law and holding the foreign company accountable act. This law basically says the U.S. will no longer turn a blind eye to non-compliance. PCAOB auditor in SEC released a list of non-compliant companies. The first prospect delist. The list including the single Chinese company listed in the U.S., including the household name and Alibaba, Baidu. Every other Chinese stock that you can think, there is a 3 years grace period, end of 2023. If U.S. and Chinese regulators cannot come to the agreement before them, the SEC will pull and trigger mass delist all of them. So investors have viewed is a ticking time bomb has been significant contributors to poor performance, the Chinese share. So what happened when Chinese company delist? There are three main ways the Chinese company can IPO. They can listen the mainland China, either the Shanghai, Shenzhen Stock Exchange. This listing called a share. Alternatively, they can list a U.S. exchange with this listing called American Depository Receipt (ADR), and finally, they can also list on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange with this stock being called the Aegis share. So each route has own PRO. CONS. So mainland stock exchange were large and liquid. Listing requirement complex and restrictive. So, for example, the company must report three consecutive years profit before the listing. The hurdle, the many money losing tech startups. So, would fail. Also, the limit exceptions for foreign investor. Not allowed to directly buy the stock. Not allowed directly buy the stock from the mainland exchange. So because the mainland exchange are dominated by the traditional industry and partial state-owned enterprise like a bank and industry company. So Hong Kong Stock Exchange listing route has less. Okay, the foreigner can freely purchase share. However, trading the bonds low valuations. Also be lower than U.S. listed stock. You look at the inside trade price. So inter-trade price chart. Even largest cap Hong Kong listed stock is see the continued jump 1 cent. So exchange list popular with largest institution investors. So they simply isn't enough liquidators buy and sell largest position without unfavorable impacting the share price. So delicately, value of the stock is the discount sum of the future cash flow. Exchange happen to trade. It shouldn't have any input. These equations practice the largest pool of potential investors. The higher, so where be the stock valuations? The U.S. will win the contest a long shot between the New York Stock Exchange and the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq U.S. has the largest stock market in the world by far, and is roughly equal the size of the next 10 countries combined. combined make huge difference for the large IPOs. So, for example, the British semiconductor company ARM currently planning for an upcoming IPO. So, the largest technology company in the UK IPO promised to a huge leap forward. The country has their stock market still dominated by the old school industry, so like banking, insurance. Despite the fact that the British company they have decided to list of the Nasdaq instead of London Stock Exchange, they believe they will yield them a much higher valuations. So, similar reasons, China technology company were largely chosen New York over Hong Kong as their valued choice for the past 20 years. But just because the US exchanges were the best options, doesn't mean they are the only options. So why the listing not the deal? It's also the non-end of the world. In January 2021, announced the 3 state-run Chinese telecommunications company will be delisted from the New York Stock Exchange after U.S. regulators claimed they had ties to the People Liberation Army. All of these companies were already dual list Hong Kong Stock Exchange. The U.S. share was transferred to Hong Kong share. This does not change fundamental value of a company, but the share price briefly dipped from the disruptions in anticipation delist risk. U.S. listed Chinese companies have preemptively jurists in Hong Kong. The problem is most popular changes like Robinhood. Robinhood don't support trading in Hong Kong listed stock. If stock is delisted, position will be marked as the closing, and only you won't be able to purchase new share. They will also stop giving the APP market data. So that's why I use the Moomoo. Was also sponsor of the video Moomoo trading app. Moomoo trading to invest in U.S. stock, ETF, and ETF as well as Hong Kong listed stock, all from the same app. So Moomoo and ETF. So due to list stock Baidu, example, you can choose whether you want to buy the Hong Kong listing. You worry about the delist risk. Can buy from Hong Kong listed share. So you only trade US stock Moomoo. Still best choice. Moomoo. So regulator broker with the customer holding the protect $500,000. Regulator broker with customer holding protect $500,000 for the CPAC, SIPC, but CPAC will protect consumer. CPAC, SIPC, they are currently running an exclusive promotions. View the channel can 13 free stock when you sign up using the link description below. So deposits at least $2,000. At least $2,000 they only last September. So make sure join myself, millions of other investors, Moomoo community, so on. Most Chinese stock listed U.S. exchange starting in September. PCAOB officials would be going to Hong Kong, work with the Chinese auditor firm, review the internal document, verify financial filing, accounting process. This is visit the successful Chinese company will be compliant, Sarbanes Oxley, and will not be listed. So why China willing to allow this after Stonewalling and the PCAOB so many years come up with a compromise? So we're allowed most Chinese company to comply without divulgence in national security related data. So state-owned company like Sinopec, 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 and the Petro China have close ties to the Chinese government. By definitions, and were not willing to provide adequate disclosure to PCAOB. The most individual investor Chinese technology and electric vehicles company like Alibaba, NIO, and much greater interest than the old school. So state-owned enterprise can remain list of alone. A big accomplishment, unlikely the NIO internal reason for the Chinese government to object them to go into the audit. But important to know is agreement still early stage. PCAOB employee will be going to Hong Kong and getting some of the data and not had access to the past disclosure. Carefully managed by their Chinese counterpart. Is no guarantee. There's no guarantee. There's be satisfied the Chinese. So this is not yet done. So hedging layer bet. Looking at the other market, July of this year, Chinese regulators fast-track approval the prices for Chinese company. This layer share, so, oh my God, stock market size of the, cannot support any close sample for the IPO.